Okay,
I think where we left off was that I had said we were going to present tonight the plan that was revised in accordance with the discussion that we had at the August HARB meeting
Okay, let me clarify for the listening public, if there's anybody out there on board with us, that we got underway at 6 o'clock and had some technical issues. In the meantime, the HARB voted to approve the minutes from the last meeting, and we had already begun the presentation by the DeLuca company. So with that introduction by Steve Harris, let's proceed and take it away.
Sure. So anybody that money got cut off, I'm Paul Johnson with Barton Partners. I'm the architect on the project I was presenting tonight. The Prickett Preserve Barn, the Pricketts have owned the site since about the 60s. They've lived and operated a antique store out of the existing barn. I have some images here of the existing barn as it currently stands today. This is the overall Prickett Farm site, showing the location of the existing house and the existing barn, which will remain after the land development. This is just an enhanced image showing the Wegmans to the north, retail in orange surrounding the barn and the house, and in yellow and purple, the clubhouse and apartments for the site as well. This is an enhanced landscape plan showing the same layout. And that the overall goal here is to maintain an open public central space between the existing house and the existing barn within the retail area that can be used by anyone on the entire site. It's just an enlarged image of that connection between the barn and the existing house, using this as a public open space. Renderings of an aerial view of the barn on the left and the house to the right, and that open public space. Just a reverse view of that with the house to the left and the barn to the right. I've included just the approved land development plan for reference. If we need to circle back to this, we have it to review tonight. So I'm going to present two options for the barn tonight. And really, we just want to kind of have a discussion about a preferred option and then an alternate option with that. So I will circle back to the plans after presenting the rendering, so it'll make more sense. We also provided a section detail of the addition that we are adding, pulling out some of the materials, just showing some of the relation of keeping the structure separate from the existing barn to try to minimize the tie-in of the addition to the existing barn. So I'm going to focus first on the corner element of the barn. Option one I'm showing is our preferred option, the option that we would like to go with. This is what you guys have already seen. This is creating that lantern on the southwest of the building, with the bump up for seating and the terraced outside decks from there. Just a couple of views of that. This would be from the main drive aisle, looking at that bumped up area. Our option two, after discussion at the last meeting, I think the consensus was that the glass box was working better than something that was more solid. So we maintained the glass box idea, but wanted to explore an alternate option of reducing the roof height to the same level as the rest of the addition to try to minimize the impact and the screening of the addition on the existing barn, comparatively to the alternate preferred option with the higher roof. You can see that there's a lot more of the barn exposed from view, depending on where you are on the site. So this would be that same view from the main drive aisle, representing how the lower roof allows you to see more of the barn. One of the details we discussed at the last meeting was the connection to the existing barn. Initially, we had shown just a 12 by 12 recess. One of the comments was to expand that detail, incorporate the roof in that. So we took the service entry of the restaurant area and tried to expand it to create more of a recess at that connection point. Which will lead me into our preferred options for the rear of the building. We have an alternate option to present tonight. This would be the view you guys have seen previously, just incorporating some more of that recessed area to try to create some more of a break at the barn, or more of a visual break at the barn. Our option 2 that we are proposing would be to scale back the length of that southern face of that addition of the barn to try to expose some of the existing doors that are there, try to expose the coins on the corner of the barn, to really let people outside of the barn perceive a little bit more than what we had previously shown. Basically, the area to the left with the recessed door is the same in either option. We just take that wall and start sliding it back to try to expose some of the area. I'll keep running through just general details. This is our front entry on the north side of the building. This has maintained much of what's existing. We previously revised the renderings to have a more open railing. There's a well to the side where the 3 stories of the barn is exposed. And that's just an eye level perspective of what that will look like from the main pedestrian circulation around the barns, to just try to attempt to keep some of that 3-story area in there. And this is something that we've had in the barn concept since day one. We just wanted to present views of it tonight, so it's a little more clear what's going on in that area. At our last meeting, we also discussed the screening at the glazing to try to create more privacy at the table level of the restaurant. These are just eye level perspectives to demonstrate what that film would look like on the glazing, maintaining that open concept we have of light being able to filter in and out, that we can see through the addition to the barn as the backdrop. But by adding a slight film to it, it creates a little bit of privacy for the people using the restaurant, just at the relation of the floor height versus the eye level. This is that similar detail to what we have on the northeast side. Just where the addition connects at the other end, we created a similar recess. On this end, we're really entirely glazing, but we took that same recess of the roof and the glazing to try to create just more of a visual break between the two, being the existing barn and the new addition. And one of the discussions at the previous meeting was what we could do at the connection point of the barn to the new addition. There was talks of creating a ribbon of skylights around the building that would allow light to wash up the building. We looked into that. I mean, there's some concerns we have with waterproofing and flashing that kind of detail at the barn, to try to create that similar effect and try to highlight the barn further. We would like to propose putting up lighting to wash the wall above the roof of the addition, so at night the barn walls have more of a glow. And what we're showing here for the rear addition would be the preferred option of the addition being out to the corner. If we scaled this back, it would be a similar idea of washing it just further back. For reference, we have the sun studies that we previously provided, just showing how the overhangs are covering the glazing at different times. And previously shown in our last presentations, just material call outs for the different materials that we are planning on using for the barn. To cover some of the details, in addition to this, we discussed at the last meeting about potentially lessening the thickness of the the roof overhangs. We had initially shown them as 18 inches. We're now showing them as 12 inches. That's a number that works with the structure, the insulation that would be required at the roofs. But we're able to make that profile a little more slender. That's the whole presentation. If there's a specific image you guys want to start with, a specific option, if you want to start with the lantern, the rear service entry, you guys let me know and I'll circle back to it.
Thank you. I would ask that the members would just present their questions, perhaps Jen first, because she, I think that one of the biggest things that I saw was that maybe the connection and the gap that was suggested was not quite what I thought Jennifer said, but maybe that is. So that setback is, I thought it was, well, Jen, I'll let you talk.
Okay. They took an interpretation of what I suggested, and it's different. It's not what I was describing. This solution starts to do what I wanted to have happen. And if this is as far as they could take it, I still think it's an improvement from what we've seen heretofore. But no, it's not exactly what I was describing.
Luba, I think you also had some interest in this gap in the relationship of the glass box to the stone wall. And I agree with Jen that I thought that the gap was going to be kind of like at the roof level continuing down. And if anything, the door that's there would be out even with the glass box wall. And there would be some kind of setback that would be a transition material. And even if it were aluminum, maybe aluminum of a different color or the fascia color or something like that to actually separate. Luba, do you have?
Actually, yeah, we discussed that at our last meeting. Is exactly what Jennifer and you have mentioned. The connection between the glass box and the existing barn, it should really be a definition, not just a little setback horizontally. It should read as almost like a shadow. You could read something totally different, even with the different material. I think, Steve, what you had mentioned before about having the clear story running all between the barn and the glass box is a really good idea. Actually, considering that the structure that is being proposed, the joist, the beam, is not touching that. It's separate. It's a separate building. So it wouldn't be really anything too difficult to achieve, I believe.
Paul, if you go back to the section, the architectural section, yeah, that went by, there it is.
Right.
I think that what all of us are talking about is saying that where that roof is just banging up against the stone wall, that have some kind of relief. And it would even help, I think, in separating the loads from the footings of the barn that are probably going to be stressed a little bit if put a new footing down tight up against it. When I did some work with old 1840s construction, I generally put the vertical structural members offset from the walls considerably, and the beam as well, set away from the wall at the roof level there. So if you set it away 2 feet and you make a clear story that's 16, 18 inches with a skylight that sits in there, that would I think help the general concept of not having this roof really attached to the barn, you know, have some kind of gasket at the top of the sloped glass, perhaps, and do it with a mechanical attachment. But this would probably end up being something of the roof material rolling right up the side of the barn, and thereby creating something that, if this ever was taken away, that it would be some surface indication that there was, you know, damage or, you know, impact of the new construction on the old. So, you know, we had I did a sketch, a cross section that kind of said that. And I think that the idea of that thinness of the cap doesn't necessarily have to take place at the inside where you need the insulation, but could transition at the face of the glass so that the top rail could be thick enough to accommodate that extra insulation. And what extends out the 3 feet could be even thinner, maybe another 4 inches thinner or 6 inches thinner, that because it doesn't have to have the insulation, it's purely a structural overhang for shading.
I don't disagree with that detail. I will say that this section is at a schematic level.
Fair enough, which is why we need to talk. Why we
Yes,
need to talk about this when it's finished plans.
We haven't taken it past the schematic level. So what we're showing here, as far as the column locations, the beam locations, they are assumptions at this point. We have done exploratory digging at the barn to determine the existing foundations, and actually, surprisingly, they are 3 feet deep in some places. Something you wouldn't necessarily expect for a barn of this age. But yeah, I mean, the intent is to offset from the existing as we develop it further, as engineers start to get on board. That's certainly something we'll be investigating. Thickness of the roof, again, we'll be investigating with structural engineers as we move forward. To the point about the connection point and the clear, or having glazing or a skylight at the connection point, at some point we still have to flash at that point where whether it's glass or whether it's solid roof, we still have to run some kind of flashing up against the existing barn to protect it, and that's where it gets tricky and costly when you start introducing glazing into that point.
I understand your point, and you're the one that has to deal with the cost, but we're the ones that are suggesting the concept to enhance what you said that you wanted to do. And I think the setback that you did on, let's call it option 2 in the southeast corner, with the setback of the box from the corner, will do exactly what you said. Will allow us to see the way the structure's put together there, the pretty distinctive coins that I actually remember mentioning to Mr. DeLuca when we had our on-site walkthrough. I said, you know, look at this thing is put together like it's going to stay forever, because that's the kind of construction that you see utilizing those coins. I would like you to think about taking it one step further and taking that area away, which you show in some of the following, or one of the following slides, that looks like a a moat, which is fine, I guess, in some cases. But I had always suggested in talking with the developer, even from the very beginning, that we want to see this hit the ground. And I'm thinking that those stone walls and the areaway could really be like all the way out at the edge of the curb. And you could do something like they've done at many ski resorts, where they don't want to disturb the natural area, and they put in a walkway that's made of a grating, and it can be, instead of concrete on grade, it would be a structure that would run along as soon as you get out of your car and step across the curb. There's or maybe even in the middle of the space, that it would be there to take pedestrian traffic, but it wouldn't necessarily be a plaza that extends right up to the face of the door. And that same thing could happen on the south side, as I think I indicated in that memo, is that that whole areaway could come out all the way to the face of the southernmost part of your addition and create a view that you can then look down into, and it could be made up of something that's not a stone wall. It might be something more like a setback landscaping block that steps back on a 45-degree angle or something like that, that lets you look down into a space that allows appreciation of where the barn is. Because otherwise, it seems to me that you end up with something that's popping up out of a concrete landscape that's just a stone wall. And why were the stones there? And why was the barn built in that way? It's a bank barn. And maybe Mr. Marshall can tell us a little bit more about that. But the idea was that the one side would be ramped up to allow for access of hay wagons to the main floor while the bottom floor was still available. So with those kind of considerations in mind, I would very seriously request you take a look at the landscaping around that corner and go with the setbacks so you can see the doors one over the other and even down the window below.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Please.
No, I was looking at that too. I guess more practically, I'm wondering, based on this same view that you have up here, where does the roof line hit that? And forgive me, Mr. Hines, for getting this term wrong. I know I will, but the elevated access door to the second floor, where does that's in the middle of the wall there? Where's the roof line hit that? Is that in the middle of the door, between the two doors that one's below? I'm having a hard time discerning where that's going to be.
Yeah, it is.
The doors to the left would be the same proportions
Okay.
that we can't see beyond the roof. Just with the existing heights we're dealing with at the barn, I understand it would be ideal to nail it between those two doors, try to line it up there, but without sacrificing a 7-foot ceiling height or 8-foot ceiling height, that's tough for a restaurant.
No, I understand. I was making sure that I was eyeballing that correctly. But that being to Steve and Mr. Hines' point here, I don't know, for no other reason than maybe Steve is fine. So no other reason than aesthetics, but also just curiosity about the building. I do like the way this looks much better than if you take it to the corner. But the other thing, and maybe it's because I'm the green guy on the board of supervisors, but there's a lot of concrete here. And so visually it's very not stark, but very drastic change. So even, Steve came up with some good ideas. The one that came to my mind, you have the trees off, they look like little birch trees or aspens or something like that over there. Even something, if you could even connect some of those instead of putting concrete between them. I know this is more of a landscape hardscape thing, but just something that breaks up that really light colored concrete. If there's
I don't disagree with that. Yeah. I mean, from a land development perspective, we're showing what the landscape architect has worked with is the building going all the way out to the corner. They haven't been presented with an opportunity to revise that, but that's, I don't disagree.
For whatever it is that works, whether it's what Steve was mentioning or just putting changing things around a little bit, but just I think just adding some type of green space, even minimally there, totally changes the look and feel of what you're experiencing just at this corner and probably at other areas around here. I'm not going to try and dictate or give you any great ideas here because that's not my bailiwick, but it just is really striking to the eye that it's just parking lot, concrete, stone wall. So if there's any way to soften that up and still, trees, maybe it's because I like trees, but trees always give you, especially deciduous, right? You'll get the shade in the summer, heat in the winter. So you can. I'm also noticing that this is a flat roof. So when we were looking at the elevation view, it looked, and you said it was schematic, but it looked like it pitched in towards the middle. So that I automatically, because we were talking about Maine earlier, I automatically think about shoveling all the time. So I always wonder how you're gonna get snow off of a roof. Not that we have a ton of snow, but and how you drain it and how that's gonna work. Just that way you don't have water. I don't want to see water ponding up against and I know you already talking about this, but ponding up against the barn itself. So you have water issues there. So I'm just wondering how you're going to deal with water issues coming off of the flat roof if you have a direct connection to that roof. That's one of my big concerns. So if you could talk about that a little bit, that would be helpful.
I mean, internal drains would be why we're pitching it towards the middle. Tapering the insulation to the drains. So I mean, it's a standard flat roof with a 1/4-inch pitch at that point.
Where are you draining? Where are you going to drain to? Is it going to drain to what's your ultimate discharge point for the roofs?
We'd be connecting into the underground, yeah.
Right.
Direct
into
connection.
the underground basins, yeah.
I
There'll be
think
roof drains, but they'll be picked up, Dan, and then, piped to the underground storm basins.
Okay. I'm
Correct.
a stormwater guy, so I get all
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
I just understand where it's going.
And this is what I consider the difficulty with granting a full approval of the concept here. I believe that you have all of the board on your side with the concept of a glass box that doesn't relate at all in terms of materials or style or age, and it just sits there, and as little as it can touch the barn, the better it is for all of us. And the same goes for the ground surface. And with those kind of things in mind, I'm thinking that if you can start to provide some more detailed information about how this kind of activity is supposed to take place, how you solve the plumbing problems, the drainage problems, the connection problems, and even the glass. With this kind of thing, we should be able to very seriously jump on board and say, yeah, this is probably going to work and be a real asset. So I was just looking at this place where the roof hits the wall there, kind of just above the divider course of stone between the upper and lower doors. And really that kind of makes it a little more simple a project to connect it to the wall, and the gasketing and the flashing that has to go up against the stonework. And the door could actually be cut short and a real sill provided underneath, so that the top rail of the skylight would be sitting kind of almost midway up the door, and allow for that kind of thing to take place. Again, creating that separation in terms of the section and the detailing, so that this glass box then becomes a thing of its own and just uses the barn as a backdrop. I think we're moving in the right direction, and we could probably send you home with a pat on the back and say, well, let's fix a few of these issues. And then, the next time you come, maybe in 2 months, you'll have some more exact representations of how you're actually going to build, and make sure that we don't injure the barn.
Well, let me be unpopular for a moment and be a lawyer for a second. But the statute that creates the HARB says the governing body shall pass upon the appropriateness of the exterior architectural features which can be seen from a public street or way only, and shall consider the general design, arrangement, texture, material, and color of all of the building and structure. And your own ordinance, which creates this, says that you're to look at the nature, texture, finish, and color of the materials, products, and elements introduced or altered within the district. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but, and I said this before, the developer can't be designing these plans and doing working drawings without knowing that the design is accepted. So I would suggest that we've tried to address the design elements of what's happening. I hear you about the trying to do some additional landscaping rather than having just flat concrete, but the requirement that in the design of the connections to the barn, the stormwater controls on the roof, and that sort of thing, I respectfully suggest is beyond the HARB's authority.
Well, thank you for your input, but let me put on my lawyer hat as well and say, since the proposal from your architect and the design team has been that this be a crystal that you can look through to see the barn and not get in the way of that appreciation of the inside, you've made it actually a part of the exterior appreciation as well. So
No, I'm not
because of what you've done, you haven't said we're going to put up clapboard enclosure and you have to look at that and evaluate that. You said you have to look through this and see the barn. That was one of the main things that was the impetus for this. So in terms of opening the door, as they say in court, this is one of the things that you've done. And we're not going to talk about the ceiling finishes on the inside or the floor finishes or anything like that, but we will talk about the thickness of the fascia and the connection point at where the roof goes up against the wall. So
well, that's fair, but when you start to talk about how you're going to be connecting, how you're going to do piping, how you're going to do stormwater controls, that's, I suggest, beyond the scope of the HARB's review. And I suspect that, and I don't know it as a fact because, I don't have that much experience. I have a lot of experience before HARB's, but not yours, that you don't typically require that kind of a detail. The building aspect of it, we're here to talk about the design aspect of it.
Okay, your point's been made. Let's proceed. Any other questions from the members?
If I could shift the attention to the alternate end of the building, just so we can come to a resolution on the direction of the lantern, per se, of the building. If the committee or the board is responding to one option versus another.
Anybody want to take that up?
Could you flip back to option one? Just how much higher is that? Couple 2-3 feet?
3 feet, yeah.
3 feet. Okay.
I think I'm leaning towards option 2. It gives you, as it was said earlier in the meeting, it gives you more visual of the barn. It's less blocking of the sight lines and things of that nature. It just gives you more of a clean look of the barn.
Paul, to respond to your question, I would think that having any kind of solid roof over that, especially since it extends 3 feet in almost every direction, makes it a big deal. If instead it became more like a greenhouse with a glass roof that did not extend over the edges and just let you appreciate the connection of the rest of it with a flat roof, that's another way to consider it. It's probably a lot more expensive, but I'll at least mention it.
Paul, I think I saw it in some of the details, but it's a little dark here. What's the material that's going to be on the underside of the roof? Is that sort of a cedar slat kind of look?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And now that would carry through the building. That's, if we're talking about interior.
It would look like the
but
interior
yeah,
ceiling.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
So it might actually soften up the look a little bit from what we're seeing here, where it would feel, or would be more like a
wood, it'd be a wood.
Yeah.
okay. It's not hardy board or anything like that.
With it being in shadow, it's not reading here, but that is the intent.
Yeah, if I could see that perspective from that corner where on option 2, please.
Lou, were you looking for the back corner?
No,
Where-
the corner where you have that well, the one
Yeah.
we had before. Yeah, that's option 2. So I definitely prefer option 2 with a setback, the connection between the glass box and the barn. In terms of setting back the glass box. In terms of the lantern, I also think I will go for one height throughout, because normally in my times, it used to be that function determines design. The function here inside the lantern is basically the same as the rest of the glass box, just stable sitting there. It's not like you have a band or something happening that you need a higher ceiling. So just for that reason also, I would have one level. And the one thing, I don't know if that's going to change, but here in this perspective, we see clearly that the stone base in the glass box really detracts from what I think it should be, and I will repeat myself again, the lightness of the box is, and I'm going to date myself here, Miss Van der Rohe glass house, the farmhouse, is all very simple glass box with very similar to this with the roof, but it doesn't have, the heaviness of that stone there, that,
That water course.
Yeah, this is supposed to be right now something that you add in modern. And, I was suggesting having more of a platform look, like say a concrete slab that would overhang over a base. And on the side where you have the tree, rather than having that clutter with shrubs, it would be just like a green carpet, very pure, going against the glass box. What else? About the well, I don't know what the rest of the board is thinking. I appreciate, the architect wanting to present the 3-story, the strength of the barn, but it sort of looks very narrow, that well, and rigid. If that could be maybe like grades going down to sort of like a French drain. The parapet would be as low as possible with the sidewalk. The railing being similar to the area railing that you have in the other parts of the building. Maybe it would be a little, make more sense. Or even, I don't know, in the side, if you have some boulders or that are original from the side, maybe having, instead of a vertical retaining heavy wall, having that built with boulders on a slope, 45 degrees. It would sort of almost look like an archaeological dig, where you see, the way the barn used to be. And that could be interspread with, say, ground cover, something that you don't have to mow, that is permanent, perennial. And you also would give some greenery to it, but it wouldn't have to be mowed. Yeah, I think that's about it.
So, Luba, to your point, I had a similar question. I'm looking you don't have your sheets numbered, but the one that looks down into the well,
Right.
Paul. I'm purely practical question here. Jim, maybe you can answer this. From an one, we're showing grass. If you're gonna mow the grass, you gotta get access to it. I don't see stairs down or a ladder down or a door into any of this. I see a couple of windows. It looks really cool. I like the look generally, with Lou's comments, obviously going with that. But I'm just wondering, is this? I don't know how does our code consider this, and just purely practical reasons moving forward. Once it's in play after a rain, how's it after a rain? If it's someone, God forbid, a little kid drops something in there, or a little kid falls in, something like that. Just super practical stuff. How they need to be addressing that stuff in their design. Excuse me.
Yeah, my one concern would just be the maintenance of that and how do you get down there? So need to sort of flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, something like
Point
that, I
about the
think we
bank
could-
board that I made before might easily be helped by making this moat a little bit wider, maybe another 5 feet, and then having it slope from the front side or the side where we currently have the clapboard, and slope down to the back corner where the backside could open up a lot further, maybe 30 feet from the building, and started where the trees are planted, and the trees could be planted at the edge of the green, and then it goes down and there's a general meeting of both slopes at the back wall, that existing back wall where it meets the existing grade. And it might make a little more sense that way. Right now, it looks like a place that will, as both of you point out, be a maintenance concern.
Oh, were you going to say something earlier? It sounded like you said you were thinking about that and had an idea.
Yeah, I mean, tearing down the wall, kind of think of it like an egress well, kind of a basement. There's things that we can look into. Obviously, it hasn't been explored at this point, as we're in the conceptual phase, but that's something that we'll work out the ingress and egress of this well.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom could be astroturf. We could work out the, like you're saying, the ingress, egress, maintenance, take care of it from that aspect. And really to make sure that, the railing is high enough so that someone cannot, fall over. So whatever that code is, 42 inches high, 48 inches high, we could definitely change the facade of that, or, other things, Paul, that, that we're thinking about, to ultimately for maintaining and, safety and all those things.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to show something like the horizontal we're showing at the lower areas of the accessible ramp. Anything that becomes a ladder is a concern, especially when you start adding a well height to it.
And is this directly connect? This is new, right? This doesn't exist on site to date. But does it
Correct.
in the back there? Does it connect? You have new stone wrapping around, connecting directly to the building on both corners.
Yes.
How deep is that well?
It'll vary from a couple feet to I believe about 7 feet at the
And I was going to say 6 or 7 feet.
yeah, at the end closer to the south.
So I'd have a hard time climbing out, is what you're saying.
On the south side, yeah.
Okay.
A little more manageable.
Yeah, you could walk to the other side.
Okay.
And, Paul, I don't know if you want to show the overall site plan, meaning, where the open space, how this all joins in the pedestrian traffic and, everything that we're talking about. So from where cars are parked, whether getting, to this building, other buildings, really keeping that pedestrian, traffic to be able to cross throughout the development is going to be, really important with the retail and, certainly even getting back if they wanted to Wegmans or Chase Bank and other things like that. So, I know we're looking at things very straight on as far as it relates to the barn, but when we look at that triangular shape on the, I would say that's the 295 side, easterly side. Just keep thinking about the pedestrian traffic that's going to walk throughout this community.
So that corner where we all seem to like, where you pull back the addition that's the corner there, right?
Yes.
It
So-
is.
So
That comes to about. this
Right there,
area. Yeah.
so that's one of your main pedestrian intersections to come in and out of, to go to the different portions of the site, right? Because you're in the
is.
middle right there.
Yeah.
So
It is. And Dan, this whole open space area, the connectivity between the farmhouse and the barn, and that public open space that, Paul had highlighted in purple throughout here, and the pedestrian walkways that go cut through back and forth to the various buildings, as we look at this barn, and we really think about how this all comes together, I just don't want us to lose focus on the overall connectivity
yeah,
throughout the site.
then I'll say, and Steve, tell me if you agree with this. I think that one corner, where we're talking about pulling back a little bit and you get to see parts of the barn is probably going to be one of the busiest corners from a pedestrian perspective in the whole thing. So that's where you're going to have the most visual, or one of the, outside of the Wegmans, of course, but in this area, you're going to get a lot of eyes just on that one corner because it's in the middle of everything. So I think that leads to, probably puts even more importance on making sure we get it right in terms of the visual aspects and making sure we, the well's over there too. So we want to make sure that's correct. But so I think if we can do something to really make sure that corner looks really good and is super safe, that'll be a nice event. That'll just be a nice feature for the tie the whole development together.
And
I
Dan,
agree
and to Luba's
wholeheartedly.
point,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, again.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm, which is one of the reasons why I put such emphasis on it in my memo. I believe that the suggestion I made earlier, and I'll reiterate it, that in places where there is some consideration of the impact on the land in developments, maybe historic sites or other locations that have that kind of concern for how does the slope exist now, and let's not get in the way. A raised walkway, a plank walkway, a grate walkway of metal grating would be the kind of thing that would be installed. And if the space that is in that corner be left at existing grade or some close approximation, it's going to give the concept of that barn that exists in a sloped landscape, which makes it a bank barn, is going to enhance the comprehension by the public of that whole concept. So, Joe, I'm sorry to have cut you off.
No, I was just, to Luba's point, where I was just saying that back of that wall was squared off with the sidewalk. So the symmetry and the dimension between that back wall and that sidewalk, a certain dimension was held. I don't know exactly what that is, Paul, whether that's 5 or 6 feet, for the pedestrian traffic. So to do some type of sloped retaining wall or other things like that to open up that wall would be, might not work.
It looks to be about a 10-foot wide sidewalk in that area.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, even that, Jim, to get enough slope and grade and,
Right.
if it were 3 to 1 or, something like that, or 4 to 1 to make it gradual. I just wanted to kind of, take this view from the top down of, of the space that we're looking at.
And Paul, on your sort of what I'll call your existing conditions photos, I think I'm just looking at on my screen right now. You can kind of see what the existing slope is, right? It's the top middle photo is where the well is.
Yep.
Would be.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any further comment from board members?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, Steve, I know we're running a little
Yes,
short on
yeah.
time. The next
I
meeting
know.
starts
We have
at
some
7:30.
people on the phone, perhaps, that wanted to be heard on this subject.
I'm here.
Okay,
And who is that?
who's that?
This is Helen Hines putting her 2 cents in.
And you need to identify your address too.
1355 Edgewood Road, Yardley, PA. I am a member of the Historic Commission, but I'm not speaking for the Historic Commission. I'm speaking for myself. 3 things. I'm a little sad that you're still not using the beautiful spaces inside the barn as to their advantage. That the view of the barn is still obscured by the sculpting that's going on around the site. I'm getting a lot of comments from people about what's going on about this. I'm sorry, am I interrupting? Okay. The sculpting of the land, that's an issue. And the third thing is, you know, it's a new little box. I get that idea. It kind of looks like a larger version glass box bus stop, which is okay, I guess. It's sort of juxtaposed.
DeLuca softening the landscaping on the south.
Steve
I'm
Harris, can
getting
you go
some
on mute,
feedback.
please? We're hearing you a little bit.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
The
Sorry,
trouble is
Dr.
I
Hines.
can't- I can't find mute on my screen.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
we're
I'm
live.
getting feedback, so I'm not hearing what's going on. Okay, am I okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. There was some background noise. Someone had to go on mute, so I just wanted
exactly. I was
to
having
repeat.
some issues with that too. So people are complaining about the movement of soil, which obviously is going to occur. And I'm getting lots of calls from people of how they're damaging the trees and, you know, all that kind of thing. And I trust that the arborist is trying his best to preserve the drip edge of that oak. But I think, you know, it's awfully close. So please be careful. The other part is the interior. I'm still upset that they're not using some of the spaces in the downstairs and the first and second floor of the structure itself to be used. But you know, that's so much for that. I'm a little upset that they haven't at least adapted, if not torn off, the sort of 20th century intrusions from the Prickett family at the front, which probably could look a lot better if that were at least addressed. And the third thing was, or the fourth thing was that you're talking about this moat. And I just had this vision of alligators, because I always think of that when I look at the CVS over on Yardley Langhorne Road, how we should probably just throw alligators down in there. And when it fills with water, at least they'll look, you know, fake alligators. It'll look like something to attack the geese. But that's a concern. I mean, I really think that does look much like the front of the CVS against the Langhorne Road. And so anything you can do to lighten it, I think it's moving in the right direction. I'm happy with what the architect has done so far. I think he's going in the right direction, make it as light as possible and look like it's something that is attached to an older structure. That's the way the National Registry suggests that you design something. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. See you all later. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment from the public, Eric?
No further public comment.
Thank you. Since we are being asked to move this along, does anybody have a motion at this point to have the Harb consider.
Steve, you're on mute.
I would like to ask that you proceed with addressing some of the comments that we had tonight, especially that corner, the fascia being still a little on the thick side and could be smaller because we don't need insulation in that overhang. The actual corner, let's call it reveal or setback at the elevation level, as well as the roof level, and see what can be done to enhance that connection and minimize the whole idea that it's stuck up against or with glue or tar or something like that, and leave it as light as possible. The interior that's visible through the glass, notwithstanding the comments by Mr. Harris, is still something that was made as a major design consideration, that we be able to see the wall. And in doing so, the representation of the interior space needs to be addressed vis-a-vis the plan of the interior, because that plan shows a bar, a sizable bar up against that wall. And as I mentioned, and if you'll note in the minutes from the last meeting, that the idea of having a back bar with display of liquors and other stuff, it would be something that does affect the view of that wall, and how it's addressed would be a consideration I think we should take under advisement. So hearing no, let's call it a motion to proceed to recommend a certificate of appropriateness, I think we would ask the presenters to come back with some further adjustments in accordance with all of the notes from all the meetings, and in particular the ones that came through tonight. And not to say that what has been done is not a major accomplishment. I think the way that the architect has approached the setback and reveal of more of that corner is certainly, I think, an advancement in the process here. And I think the general understanding and concept of a one flat roof that minimizes the impact that was shown before from that raised section, I think that that's kind of come to some kind of understanding with the members of the board. And I'll let them make any final comments they want. Hearing none, I would ask if you have another motion as perhaps to adjourn, and then we can leave this channel open for the next meeting that's supposed to take place on.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Thanks for your participation, and good night, presenters and members alike, and thanks for coming back and being with us, Stan. It's great to have you.
To be here.
Okay.
You want to leave?
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Signify. Aye. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, Monica?
This has never happened with Mid-Atlantic. Someone new with Mid-Atlantic? I only knew John and Eric. Yeah, for whatever it's worth, this is the only part I don't control. This is. Chairman.